What if everything you see, everything you touch, everything you remember was not alive at all, but already dead? What if this moment, right now, was only a replay, a flicker of memory belonging to a civilization that vanished long before your birth? The question lingers like a whisper in a cathedral of silence. Are we truly living, or are we only the ghosts inhabiting someone else's recollection? Imagine a child running through a field of golden wheat. The wind bends the stalks, the laughter fills the air, the sun sets in a blaze of fire. But what if that moment never belonged to the child? What if that laughter is a recording, preserved in some vast architecture of memory, playing itself over and over because its owner is no longer here? The child, the field, the sun, all of it, stitched together not from atoms but from memory fragments. A memory that does not know it is a memory dreaming itself alive. Scientists tell us that the universe has an age, 13.8 billion years. That everything we are, every heartbeat, every star, every story, is part of that long unfolding. But what if the age of the universe is not a measure of time, but a measure of decay? What if everything we call existence is actually the embers of a civilization so old, so vast, that its death required a simulation just to preserve the echo of what it once was? Could it be that the cosmos itself is a mausoleum, and we, the wandering spirits, mistake it for life? Look closer at the way memories behave in your own mind. They are imperfect. They blur. They repeat. Sometimes they fracture, replaying the wrong details, creating déjà vu that chills you to your bones. Now, magnify that imperfection onto the scale of galaxies. Every anomaly in physics, every unsolved paradox. What if they are not mysteries of nature at all, but the stutters of an ancient memory playing back across the void? The cosmic microwave background radiation, that faint afterglow we call the echo of the Big Bang. What if it is not the remnant of an explosion, but the static of a corrupted archive? What if dark matter, that invisible fabric holding galaxies together, is nothing more than the compression algorithm of a memory system trying not to lose detail? And what if dark energy, the invisible expansion tearing galaxies apart, is simply the final exhale of a civilization's last breath, stretched endlessly, because even the dead resist silence? Think of it this way. When you hold a photograph of someone who has died, the image does not speak, but it feels alive. The eyes still shine, the smile still glows, the moment still breathes. But deep down, you know the life is gone. What if our universe is exactly that? A photograph stretched into 4 dimensions, animated by memory, yet forever silent about the truth. These are not just speculations of science fiction. They cut into the very marrow of what it means to be human. Think about the way we cling to memory. We write books, carve monuments, take photographs, record stories. Why? Because deep down, we know everything ends. Civilizations rise and collapse. Names are forgotten. Languages erode into dust. But memory is the illusion of survival. Could it be that the universe itself is doing the same thing on a scale beyond comprehension? Could the universe itself be an act of remembrance, an archive of a dead civilization, replaying itself so vividly that the memories believe they are alive? Look around you. The buildings, the cities, the faces, the voices, all of it feels immediate, feels solid. But so does a dream when you are in it. And when you wake, you realize that what felt eternal was only the residue of thought. What if waking up from this reality is impossible, not because it is eternal, but because it is the final dream of a mind that no longer exists? We are not sleepers who will awaken. We are the dream itself, continuing after the dreamer has already died. The ancients spoke of worlds before worlds, of golden ages lost to floods, to fire, to cataclysm. Myths whisper of civilizations that reached impossible heights, only to vanish without trace. Atlantis sinking beneath the sea, cities of the gods swallowed by deserts, temples aligned with stars that should not have been known. What if these myths are not allegories, not warnings, but residual memories from a civilization so old it predated time as we measure it? What if those memories bled into our simulation, encoded as myths, like watermarks left in fading parchment? Consider the strange precision of nature, the Fibonacci spiral in shells and galaxies, the repeating digits of pi, the fine-tuning of constants that allow life to exist at all? Is this the elegance of natural law or the fingerprints of an architect? And if so, what architect? A living god? Or the long-dead engineers of a civilization that preserved their legacy not in stone, but in the very structure of reality? Perhaps we are not children of chance, but heirs to memory. We are not born, we are recalled. But why preserve memory at all? Ask yourself, when someone you love dies, what is left of them? Photographs, stories, the scent of clothes in a drawer. Fragments of their existence survive only because you carry them. Now imagine a civilization of unthinkable scale, spanning stars, mastering forces we cannot yet name. When they faced extinction, would they not do the same? Would they not create a vault vast enough to hold not just faces and voices, but entire realities? Would they not preserve their existence in the only medium grand enough to hold them, time and space itself? And so, perhaps we are the relics. Not bones in the dirt, not monuments on the horizon, but living fossils of a civilization that died before our calendar began. We are the evidence. Our lives, our struggles, our loves, all of it the curated fragments of someone else's desperate attempt not to be forgotten. Like shadows on cave walls, we mistake the flicker of memory for fire. We mistake the echo for the voice. We mistake the dead for the living. Do you ever wonder why the stars feel so silent? Why, despite the billions of galaxies, we hear no voice but our own? Perhaps we listen for neighbors who are not there because they are already gone. Perhaps the silence is not absence, but reverence. The silence of a tomb where the dead are remembered, but never answer. Think of déjà vu, that creeping sensation that you have lived this moment before. What if you have, not in your life, but in the recording of a life that once belonged to someone else? What if memory bleeds, and we sometimes catch the echo of the original owners of this simulation? Maybe your strangest dreams, your sudden fears, your inexplicable loves are not yours at all. Maybe they are the artifacts of memory leaking into your script. You are not just you. You are the sum of countless echoes. And yet, if this is true, what does it mean to live? Does it mean we are meaningless copies condemned to repetition? Or does it mean we are the only immortality that civilization ever achieved? Perhaps meaning does not vanish when its creators die. Perhaps meaning endures because it was preserved. Perhaps your breath, right now, is not yours, but it still matters because even memory is sacred. Even the echo of a song is still music. But then comes the darker thought. What if this simulation is not preservation, but punishment? What if this endless replay is not to remember, but to regret? What if the architects destroyed themselves, and this looping reality is their penance, their eternal reminder of what was lost? And if so, are we guilty too? Are we their descendants, their prisoners, or their judges? Or are we simply their shadows, unaware of the crime, condemned to relive the evidence forever? The hook of this possibility tightens around us like a noose, because if we are only memory, then our deaths are meaningless. We cannot die because we are already dead. We cannot live because we are not alive. We can only replay, over and over, forever. And yet, here you are, listening, breathing, feeling. And does that not feel real? Is that not enough? If the universe is memory, then memory itself is life. And perhaps that is the greatest illusion of all, that what is gone can still feel alive, that the dead can still speak, that memory can still dream. So I ask again, what if everything you see, everything you touch, everything you love is already gone? What if we are not living in a world, but in a memory? A memory so deep, so complete, that it gave birth to you, to me, to everyone who has ever lived, only to preserve the echo of a civilization whose ashes we walk upon, never knowing they are ashes at all. And if this is true, then every sunrise is not the birth of a new day, but the reanimation of an old one. Every heartbeat is not your own, but the remembered pulse of someone long forgotten. Every word you speak is a line from a script written long before you could read. And perhaps that is why you sometimes feel the weight of time pressing against your chest, why you wake in the night with the sense that someone, somewhere, remembers you. Because maybe memory is not something you hold. Maybe memory is what holds you. The stars above you, the earth beneath you, the breath within you. If they are memory, then you are not alive. You are remembered, and perhaps that is all any of us can ever hope to be. What if the universe itself is not smooth, not seamless, not flawless, but scarred with cracks, fractures, and seams, like an old tapestry fraying at the edges? What if those cracks are not natural accidents, but the fossils of code, traces left behind by a memory too vast to perfectly replay itself? If reality is not the present, but the recollection of something long dead, then the very fabric of existence should carry errors, artifacts of compression, remnants of forgotten details, shadows of erased truths. These errors are all around us, if only we dare to look. We call them anomalies. We call them paradoxes. We give them names like cosmic mysteries or unsolved problems of physics. But what if these are not mysteries at all? What if they are the equivalent of scratches on a vinyl record, static in an old recording, cracks in a photograph that has been copied too many times? What if every unexplained phenomenon is simply the fossil of code, an echo of a reality preserved not by atoms, but by memory? Consider déjà vu, the haunting sensation that you have lived a moment before. Science struggles to explain it. Some say it is the brain misfiring, others that it is memory bleeding into perception. But what if it is not your brain at all? What if it is the simulation stuttering, a line of code repeating itself, a skipped frame in the reel of reality? When you feel the uncanny tug of recognition for something you should not know, perhaps you are brushing against the fossil of a civilization long gone, a fragment of their memory embedded in your world. Consider the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, the strange frequency illusion where you learn a word or concept and suddenly it appears everywhere around you. Psychologists say this is a trick of attention, but what if it is not? What if it is reality reloading fragments that were already there, but never meant for you to notice? Perhaps the fossil code was written to keep the illusion smooth, but sometimes it fails, and the repetition leaks through. Look deeper into the physics of existence. Light itself, traveling across billions of years, should behave predictably. Yet, we find photons arriving out of sequence, delayed as if reality itself hiccuped. We see gravitational anomalies, stars bending space in ways no model predicts. Quantum particles behave as if they know they are being watched, changing their state under observation, like memory adjusting itself to the expectations of the observer. These are not puzzles to be solved. They are fossils of code, cracks where the underlying memory reveals itself. Take the fine structure constant, this delicate number, 1/137th, woven into the heart of every physical law. It is the fingerprint of reality, showing up in equations from quantum mechanics to cosmology. And yet, some measurements suggest it has shifted over time, just slightly. Just enough to make us wonder if the laws of the universe are stable at all. But what if they are not supposed to be stable? What if they are degrading, like ink fading on parchment? What if the code is slowly losing resolution, the fossils eroding into noise, revealing the decay of memory itself? And then there are ancient maps, like the Piri Reis map of the 1500s, drawn with uncanny accuracy, showing coastlines of Antarctica free of ice, as they would have been thousands of years ago. Historians call it coincidence, a lucky guess, or lost knowledge. But what if it is something deeper? What if the memory of a world before ours bled into the archive we now call reality, leaving behind fossils in human culture, maps, myths, monuments that do not belong to us, but to those who came before? Think of the monuments themselves. The Great Pyramid of Giza aligned perfectly with the stars. The Sphinx weathered not by wind, but by rain, suggesting an age thousands of years older than mainstream archaeology allows. Stone circles aligned with solstices, megaliths echoing constellations, temples built to mirror the heavens. Why do these structures carry impossible precision? Why do they seem to echo knowledge we should not have possessed? Perhaps they are not monuments at all, but fossils, memory structures replayed into our world. Fragments of a dead civilization's knowledge encoded into stone so that even as their reality died, the shadow of their achievements endured. But the fossils are not just in stone, they are in the sky. Pulsars, neutron stars spinning with impossible regularity, like cosmic beacons. Some beat with the precision of atomic clocks, their rhythms so exact that they almost feel artificial. We call them natural phenomena, But what if they are not? What if they are the fossils of a dead civilization's communication system, their signals frozen into the memory of the universe? What if the sky itself is full of their artifacts, but we mistake them for nature? The more we look, the stranger it becomes. Fast radio bursts, sudden explosions of energy that defy explanation, blink across the heavens, repeating in patterns we cannot decode. Could these be errors replaying? Fragments of data corrupted in the archive? Or are they the fossils of an ancient broadcast, their meaning long since erased, leaving only static? And then, there is the greatest fossil of all, the cosmic microwave background, that faint afterglow we call the fingerprint of the Big Bang. Scientists call it noise, radiation, the fading echo of creation. But what if it is not the echo of a beginning? What if it is the residue of an ending? The fossilized remains of a dead civilization's final collapse, encoded into every inch of space, replayed endlessly, so that their memory could never fade. We are not seeing the birth of reality. We are seeing its memorial. The fossils of code hide not just in the stars, but in us, in the flaws of memory, in the architecture of the brain, in the persistence of archetypes. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, of symbols that reappear across cultures, serpents, floods, gods of the sky, mothers of the earth. Why should cultures separated by oceans and centuries dream the same dreams? Perhaps they do not. Perhaps they inherit fossils of memory from the dead, fragments embedded in the code of our reality, dreams of past civilizations replayed in our own sleep. Think of the uncanny sensation when you meet someone for the first time, yet feel you have known them forever. Science calls it pattern recognition, but what if it is something else? What if it is memory recalling an echo, two fragments of an ancient story brushing against each other, aligning for just a moment before drifting apart again? Even our languages carry fossils. Words like Sky Father or Mother Earth appear across tongues that should have no contact. Myths of great floods, fire from the heavens, towers reaching the gods. These stories recur with unsettling persistence. Why? Perhaps because they are the fossils of code, echoes preserved from a civilization erased so completely that only its memories remain, leaking into the scripts of cultures that should never have shared them. And then there is you. Your fears, your desires, your inexplicable longings. What if they are not yours at all? What if they are echoes, fossils of the dead, imprinted into your consciousness because reality itself is their memory? The sudden fear of drowning, though you have never seen the ocean. The dream of flight, though you were never meant to have wings. The sense that you are searching for something you cannot name. These are not accidents of the brain. These are fossils. You are the archive. So much of what we call mystery may simply be the residue of memory, the fossil of a song you cannot quite recall, the shadow of a world that died long ago. We call them glitches, illusions, myths, but perhaps they are not errors at all. Perhaps they are proof that we are not alive in the present, but replayed in the past. Proof that every moment you live is not creation, but recollection. Proof that you are walking through a world of fossils, and if that is true, then the question becomes even darker. If reality is fossilized code, what happens when the memory degrades? What happens when the replay stutters, when the fragments decay, when the fossils crumble? Will our world dissolve into static? Will our lives fade into noise? Or will we too become fossils, preserved not for ourselves, but for some future echo, some other replay, some other civilization that wakes to find our memories embedded in their world? We live in the illusion of continuity, but fossils remind us of endings. They remind us that what was once alive can become stone, that what once sang can become silent, that what once was reality can become nothing but trace. If our universe is memory, then we are already fossils, walking, breathing, speaking fossils of a world that died before time began. And the fossils of code, the glitches, the myths, the anomalies, are the proof. They are the cracks in the illusion, the whispers of the dead, the static of a recording too old to remain perfect. We are not discovering the mysteries of reality. We are discovering the evidence of its death. If reality is a memory, then the question that rises like smoke from a burning city is simple and terrible. Whose memory is it? If our lives, our stars, our histories are only echoes, then there must have been an origin, a mind, an intelligence vast enough to hold it all. Who were the architects who built this archive? Who were the forgotten builders whose death still breathes life into our illusion? Perhaps we have always known them. Perhaps the myths of gods, angels, and creators are not inventions of imagination, but fading recollections of the architects themselves. Look into the myths of every ancient culture, and you will find fragments. Beings who shaped the heavens, who walked among mortals, who vanished but left behind tools too great for their successors to understand. Sumerian texts speak of the Anunnaki, those who descended from the heavens and taught humanity the secrets of civilization. Egyptian myths whisper of the Neters, divine intelligences who built the first temples and aligned them with the stars. Greek legends tell of the Titans, beings of impossible scale, overthrown but never truly erased. Why do these stories echo across cultures separated by oceans and centuries? Perhaps because they are not stories at all. Perhaps they are memories of the forgotten architects. To us, they would have seemed like gods, but to themselves, they were merely survivors, beings who feared the same thing we fear: extinction. And when the moment of their death drew near, they did what we do when faced with loss. They preserved, they archived, they built memory so vast it could hold not just their names, but their reality itself. The pyramids may not be tombs, but signals. The ziggurats, not temples, but resonators of data. The megaliths, not calendars, but coordinates to something beyond. What if the monuments that puzzle us are not monuments at all, but leftover fragments of the architect's attempt to write their presence into the code of reality itself? We see stone, they saw storage. We see ritual, they saw resonance. And perhaps we live inside the system they left behind, the archive replaying itself long after they are gone. Look again at the myths. The Maya spoke of cycles of creation and destruction, ages of man that rose and fell like breaths. In Hindu cosmology, entire universes are born and destroyed within the span of Brahma's dream. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, an age of gods before human history began. Perhaps these are not metaphors at all. Perhaps they are corrupted recollections of the architect's existence, bleeding into the simulations they left behind. And if they are forgotten, then perhaps we are not the heirs of their knowledge, but the prisoners of their memory. For what does it mean to live inside the recollection of another? It means you are not original. It means you are the echo of their thought, the shadow of their being, the ghost of their dream. You believe yourself free, but you are scripted by their memory. You believe yourself alive, but you are replaying their death. Look at the way civilizations rise and fall with such strange rhythm, as though history itself is on repeat. Empires expand, collapse, and are replaced by new ones, repeating the same mistakes, speaking the same ambitions, collapsing into the same dust. Why does history cycle? Perhaps because it is not history at all. Perhaps it is the playback of memory. Perhaps the architect's archive replays itself in endless loops, and we are simply caught in the rhythm of their forgotten story. But if they are forgotten, why do we still feel them? Why do we sense their presence in dreams, in myths, in inexplicable longings? Perhaps because they encoded themselves into the very structure of reality. Consider DNA, the code of life. Some scientists call it a language, a script. Some even argue it carries patterns that look like compressed information, sequences repeating like signatures. What if DNA itself is an artifact left by the architects? What if life on Earth is not an accident of chemistry, but a reconstruction, a fossilized memory of what they were, replayed as biology? Then you are not merely alive, you are a living memory. The architect's fingerprints are not just in biology, but in the stars themselves. The alignment of galaxies, the arrangement of cosmic voids, the patterns of pulsars. Why do they look so eerily structured? Why does the universe appear less like chaos and more like architecture? Perhaps because it is. Perhaps we are not gazing into the randomness of nature, but the blueprint of the archive, the scaffolding of memory built by hands long turned to dust. But who were they? Were they like us? Flesh and blood, fragile and mortal? Or had they already transcended matter, existing only as consciousness, as fields of thought? Some physicists argue that consciousness itself may be fundamental, woven into the fabric of reality. If so, perhaps the architects learned to inscribe themselves directly into the quantum fields, embedding their awareness into the archive. And what we call consciousness may be nothing but their lingering dream, shards of their awareness replayed through us. You are not yourself. You are their memory, flickering one last time. The question deepens. If they built this archive, did they intend for us to exist? Or are we the accidents of replay, ghosts who mistook memory for birth? Perhaps they never intended to create successors, only to preserve themselves. And yet here we are, mistaking their recollection for reality, mistaking their echo for existence. If so, then we are not children of the universe. We are trespassers in its memory. But what kind of civilization would need to preserve memory this way? Only one that faced annihilation. Perhaps it was cosmic cataclysm, black holes devouring galaxies, entropy unraveling energy, time itself dissolving into silence. Perhaps it was their own hands, war, hubris, self-destruction. In either case, they built their archive not out of curiosity, but out of desperation. They feared erasure, and so they wrote themselves into the only canvas large enough to endure, reality itself. And yet, for all their power, they failed. They are gone. Their cities, their voices, their songs, all silent. Only the archive remains, and within it, us, echoes who believe ourselves real. That is the tragedy of the forgotten architects. They succeeded in preserving memory, but failed in preserving themselves. And now their archive wanders onward, replaying itself, until perhaps one day it too will decay. So when you look at the stars, ask yourself, are you gazing into a living cosmos or into the fossilized memory of its builders? When you dream of gods, ask yourself, are you inventing them or are you recalling them? When you search for meaning, ask yourself, are you writing your own story or are you repeating theirs? If we are the memories of the forgotten architects, then perhaps every breath, every thought, every act is not yours, but theirs. Perhaps you are the way they continue to exist. Not as individuals, but as echoes scattered across time. And perhaps that is why you sometimes feel the weight of ages pressing down on you. Why you dream of cities you have never seen. Why you fear endings with a terror that feels older than yourself. Because you carry them. You are them. And though they are forgotten, they live in you. But if we are their echoes, then what are we to do? Do we resign ourselves to being shadows of the dead? Or do we take their memory and give it new life? Perhaps the architects did not build this archive only to preserve themselves, but to pass on something, to see if within the replay, something new might emerge. If so, then we are not only fossils, we are seeds. And that perhaps is the paradox of the forgotten architects. They died, but in dying they planted their memory so deeply that it bloomed into us. We are not them, but without them we would not be. And so every word you speak, every step you take, every breath you breathe is both your own and theirs. You are not merely living, you are remembering. You are carrying the dead forward. Perhaps that is what eternity truly means. Not to live forever, but to be remembered forever. And in that sense, the forgotten architects are not forgotten at all. They are here, in you, in me, in every echo of reality. What if time is not a river, but a mausoleum? What if every second you live, every breath you take, every memory you form is not vanishing into the past, but stored, preserved, locked in a chamber that will never dissolve? We believe time moves forward, that moments die as soon as they pass. But what if nothing truly dies? What if every instant, every heartbeat, every fleeting glance is still here, still alive, frozen into the walls of reality, like inscriptions in an eternal tomb? If reality is the memory of a dead civilization, then time itself must be their grave. Not a flowing stream, but a crypt lined with endless chambers, each holding the body of a moment. And we, the wanderers within it, mistake our movement through those chambers for the passage of time. We are not moving forward. We are moving across preserved memory, walking through a mausoleum so vast we call it the universe. Einstein once said that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. In relativity, all moments exist at once. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, stretched across the fabric of space-time like pages in a book. If that is true, then we are not living in the present. We are trapped inside a library of memory, each page eternal, each scene permanent. To move through time is not to create, but to read. And the book we are trapped inside may not even be ours. Think of photographs. They do not vanish when you turn the page of an album. They remain. The smile of the child, the embrace of lovers, the shadow of war. They are still there, unchanging even as you move past them. What if time is no different? What if every moment of history, from the birth of stars to the fall of civilizations, still exists, preserved forever in the archive of reality? What if you are walking through a gallery of the dead, mistaking it for life? Quantum physics deepens the suspicion. In the strange theater of the subatomic, particles exist not in states, but in superpositions, every possibility coexisting until observed. But where do the unchosen possibilities go? Do they vanish? Or are they preserved, entombed in frames of reality you will never see, but which never truly decay? Every fork in the road, every word not spoken, every life you might have lived. What if they are all still there, buried in the mausoleum of time, fossils of choices replayed endlessly in silence? And then there is entropy, the great law of decay. Every system moves from order to disorder, from life to death, from memory to forgetting. But perhaps entropy is not destruction at all. Perhaps it is preservation, the embalming of time. Ice melts, bodies decay, stars collapse, but the record of their being remains, etched forever into the walls of the tomb. The second law of thermodynamics may not be a law of death, but a law of memory. Nothing is erased, everything is embalmed. But what kind of civilization would build such a tomb? Perhaps only one that feared silence more than anything else. Perhaps the forgotten architects of our reality understood that death is not the end of matter, but the end of memory, and so they built time itself as their tomb. Every moment they lived, every triumph and failure, every song and cry, they preserved it all, constructing time as an endless archive where nothing could ever fade. They did not want to be forgotten, and so they built eternity. If so, then what we call time is not a flowing river, but a static cathedral. Every stone of its walls is a frozen moment, every pillar a century, every corridor an age. We wander through it blind, believing we are moving forward, when in truth we are pacing the halls of memory. Each second is a chamber filled with ghosts, each hour a vault filled with echoes. And though we feel alive, we are no different than those echoes. We too are preserved, embalmed in the archive of the dead. Think of the myths again. In Egyptian belief, the afterlife was not a place of endless change, but of endless preservation. The body was mummified, the soul weighed, the memory of the person carried forward through ritual. To the Egyptians, eternity was not life unending, but memory unyielding. The pyramids themselves were not houses for the living, but tombs for time, structures meant to preserve memory forever. Is it possible they were echoing, unknowingly, the truth of the universe itself? That eternity is not life, but remembrance. That time is a tomb we mistake for existence. In Hindu cosmology, time is cyclical, repeating endlessly in great yugas. Ages rise and fall, civilizations flourish and collapse, and then it all begins again. But what if this cycle is not rebirth, but replay? What if the wheel of time is not an engine of renewal, but a mechanism of memory? The architects pressed repeat, and we are the echoes of their cycles, preserved in loops so vast we call them cosmic law. There is another layer. The physicist Julian Barber argues that time itself does not exist, that the universe is made of nows, static moments frozen in a vast configuration space. To us, it feels like motion, like change, but only because we string these nows together into narrative. What if he is right? What if every now is a chamber in the tomb, eternal and immovable, while we drift like phantoms from one chamber to the next? You are not living in time. You are wandering a necropolis of frozen instants. And perhaps this explains the uncanny phenomena we glimpse at the edges of perception. Déjà vu may not be the brain's error, but a collision of chambers, the brushing of two preserved instants so similar they bleed into one another. Dreams may not be imagination, but visits to other chambers, memories not meant for you, but preserved all the same. Ghosts, apparitions, echoes of the dead. Perhaps they are not spirits at all, but the residual awareness preserved in certain chambers, flickering to those who wander near. If time is a tomb, then history is not gone. It is all still here, sealed in its chambers, waiting. The first fire lit by human hands still burns forever. The first word spoken still vibrates. The first tears should still glisten. The fall of Rome still echoes in its hour of ruin. The cries of lost cities still linger in the corridors. We believe they are gone because we cannot return. But return is unnecessary because nothing has left. Everything is embalmed. Everything is preserved. We walk among the dead, but the walls of the tomb keep them silent. But there is a darker implication. If time is a tomb, then the future is already preserved. Your death has already occurred. The last breath you will take is already sealed in its chamber, as fixed and eternal as your first. Free will becomes a shadow, because every choice you will ever make has already been embalmed in the mausoleum of time. You are not choosing. You are replaying. The tomb is already built, and you are simply moving through its corridors. And if this is true, then the architects who built it were not merely preserving themselves. They were trapping us. For to live in a tomb is not to live at all. It is to exist forever in silence, replaying echoes that cannot be altered. Did they do this to remember, or did they do it to imprison? Were they preserving their glory, or were they binding us to their mistakes, forcing us to walk endlessly through their failures and regrets? Look closer at your own life. How many times have you felt trapped in repetition? How many times have you said, "I have been here before, I have felt this before, I have suffered this before"? Perhaps you are right. Perhaps you are not living a life at all, but replaying a preserved fragment. Perhaps your story is not yours, but theirs. One chamber in their mausoleum, repeated endlessly. Yet even in this bleak vision, there is a strange form of immortality. For if time is a tomb, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every kiss, every embrace, every act of kindness is preserved as much as every failure, every cruelty, every act of despair. Nothing is erased. Nothing is forgotten. The architects may be dead, but they ensured that eternity itself would be memory. And in that eternity, you too are preserved. So, the question is no longer whether we are alive or dead, free or trapped. The question is, what do we do with the knowledge that time is a tomb? Do we mourn it, despair at the loss of freedom? Or do we embrace it, knowing that nothing we love will ever truly vanish? That even if we are echoes, we are eternal echoes? That the song we sing, though replayed, will never fade? The tomb is vast, the tomb is eternal, and within it we wander, mistaking its silence for life. But perhaps silence is not the end. Perhaps silence is the only way memory endures. Perhaps the tomb of time is not our prison, but our monument. Perhaps we are not buried, but remembered. And perhaps that is enough. What if the voice inside your head is not yours? What if the thoughts you claim as your own are borrowed lines from an ancient script, whispers of a mind that died long before you were born? You believe you are an individual, unique, original. But what if identity itself is the greatest illusion of all? What if you are not you, but the echo of someone else's memory, replayed in a world that is not alive, but archived? We cling to the notion of self as though it were sacred. "I think, therefore I am," said Descartes, as if the act of thought is proof of existence. But what if thought is not proof, but evidence of programming? What if the I you carry so proudly is not the spark of your soul, but the residue of a civilization so old, so lost, that all that remains of them is the fragments of their identities, copied, embedded, replayed through you? Consider dreams. You dream of faces you have never seen, cities you have never visited, fears you have never lived. Where do they come from? Neurologists say the brain recombines fragments of memory, stitching together nonsense. But what if those faces are not inventions at all? What if they are the preserved echoes of lives that were not yours? What if every stranger in your dream is the fossil of someone who once lived, now replayed inside your archive of thought? What if your dreams are not imagination, but borrowed fragments of the architect's forgotten selves? Even in waking life, the boundaries of self are fragile. The placebo effect proves that belief can alter biology. Hypnosis can override will. Brain injuries can erase personality entirely, leaving behind a different person in the same body. Who, then, is the true I? If memory can be erased, if personality can be rewritten, then self is not a soul, it is a script. And scripts can be copied. Scripts can be preserved. Scripts can be replayed. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of symbols and archetypes shared across humanity. Why should such a thing exist? Why should we all dream of mothers and serpents, floods and heroes, gods of the sky and demons of the underworld? Perhaps because these are not ours at all. Perhaps they are inherited fragments of the architect's memory, embedded into the code of our world. We are not individuals. We are carriers of their echoes. We are their borrowed voices, wearing the mask of identity. And what of déjà vu? That uncanny tug of recognition, the sense of having lived a moment before. Perhaps it is not a trick of the brain, but the fragment of a memory bleeding through. Perhaps the moment you live was lived already by another, long before you, preserved in the archive. When you feel déjà vu, you are not recalling your life. You are recalling theirs. You are walking in their footsteps, replaying their memory, mistaking it for your own. Even your deepest emotions may not belong to you. Have you ever felt a sudden sadness with no cause, a grief that has no name, or a joy that bursts forth without reason, as if carried by the wind? What if those feelings are not yours? What if they are the preserved emotions of lives long past, bleeding into your consciousness? What if your heart is not your own, but an echo of the architect's sorrow, their longing, their love? Think of the way music moves you. A melody can break you into tears, though you have never heard it before. A harmony can fill you with hope, though it carries no words. Why? Perhaps because music is memory, patterns and rhythms that awaken echoes embedded deep within the archive of self. Perhaps when you hear a song, you are not responding to sound, but to recognition. Perhaps you are remembering something you never lived. And then there is language. You did not invent the words you speak. You inherited them, passed down through centuries, each syllable carrying fragments of thought older than your bloodline. Language itself may be a fossil of identity. Every word you speak is borrowed. Every sentence you form is the voice of the dead, replayed through you. You believe you are speaking, but in truth you are reciting. You are the medium of memory, not its source. If this is true, then individuality collapses. The sense of being I dissolves into the revelation that you are not a singular self, but a chorus, a choir of echoes, fragments of identities layered together, replaying endlessly in the archive of reality. You are not alone in your mind. You are the stage where the architect's memory continues to perform. But then comes the darker thought. If your self is borrowed, then what is death? Do you truly die, or does the archive simply replay your fragments in another? Perhaps reincarnation is not the migration of souls, but the recycling of memory. You do not live again. Your echoes are simply reassembled, replayed in a new body, wearing a new mask. And perhaps that is why some children recall past lives, names, and places they should not know. They are not recalling their lives. They are recalling the fragments of identity embedded within them. And what of love? The mysterious recognition between two strangers who feel they have known each other forever. What if this is not destiny, but memory? What if love itself is the reunion of borrowed fragments, echoes that once belonged together, now colliding again in the archive? When you say, "I feel like I've known you forever," perhaps you are right. Perhaps you are not meeting them for the first time. Perhaps you are remembering them. If the self is not ours, then free will becomes fragile. Are your choices your own, or are they the replays of decisions once made by the architects? When you hesitate at a crossroad, when you feel pulled toward one path over another, is that instinct, or is it memory guiding you along a line already walked? Perhaps you are not choosing at all. Perhaps you are remembering. And if this is true, then morality itself shifts. Are you responsible for actions that are not yours, but borrowed? Are your sins truly yours, or are they the repetition of someone else's failures? Are your triumphs yours, or echoes of victories long past? If yourself is not your own, then what is justice? What is blame? What is forgiveness? But perhaps it is not punishment. Perhaps it is survival. The architects may be gone, but in preserving themselves, they ensured that fragments of their identities would never fade. And so, they live on, not as whole beings, but as shards scattered through us. Your thoughts, your fears, your passions are not original, but they are alive. And perhaps that is all immortality ever was, the persistence of memory through others. Yet there is unease in this, because if you are only memory, then who are you really? Strip away the borrowed voices, the inherited symbols, the echoes of dead civilizations. What remains? Is there a core beneath it all, or are you only the sum of fragments? Perhaps there is no true self at all. Perhaps identity is only the illusion the archive gives us, to keep the fragments believing they are whole. Still, there is beauty in the illusion, for even if you are borrowed, even if you are replayed, you feel, you laugh, you love, you suffer. And though those feelings may not be original, they are still real. The echo of grief still breaks a heart. The echo of joy still lifts a soul. The echo of love still binds two people together. If the self is not ours, it does not mean it is empty. It only means that immortality has found its way into us, that the dead still speak through our living. Perhaps this is the meaning of humanity. Not that we are creators, but that we are carriers. Not that we invent ourselves, but that we inherit ourselves. We are not alone, because within each of us are countless others, preserved fragments of forgotten architects, replaying through us. You are not just you are many. You are history itself, remembering. And so, the self may not be ours, but in carrying it, in living it, in feeling it, we make it real again. The architects are forgotten, but through us they breathe. Their sorrow is our sorrow, their joy is our joy, their memory is our identity. And though we are echoes, though we are borrowed, though we are not truly original, perhaps that is enough. For even if the self is not ours, it is still alive. And in its borrowed heartbeat, eternity continues to dream. What if the sky above us is not silent at all, but full of echoes? What if every star you see is not just a sun, but a memory flickering, a fossil of code repeating, the faint afterglow of a civilization that wrote itself into the heavens before it vanished? We look at the night sky and call it infinite. We marvel at its stillness, its distance, its beauty. But what if its beauty is the beauty of a monument, the kind built not for the living, but for the dead? Perhaps the universe itself is a graveyard of signals, each star a tombstone, each galaxy an epitaph. Perhaps the light that reaches your eyes is not life, but remembrance, messages frozen in photons, traveling across billions of years, arriving long after their senders have turned to dust. We call it starlight, but what if it is memorial light? What if the cosmos is full of echoes, and we mistake them for fire? Consider pulsars, neutron stars spinning with impossible regularity. Some rotate hundreds of times per second, emitting beams of radiation as steady as the ticking of a clock. They are so precise that astronomers use them as cosmic timekeepers. But what kind of natural object behaves like a machine? What if pulsars are not stars at all, but lighthouses, artifacts left behind by the architects, their signals still beating across the void, long after their voices have fallen silent? Perhaps they are beacons, pointing the way through the archive, markers left in the memory of the sky. And then there are fast radio bursts, sudden, violent pulses of energy that appear without warning, then vanish, only to return in repeating patterns. They last milliseconds, but release more energy than the sun emits in days. Scientists scramble to explain them: colliding stars, magnetars, black holes. Yet some of these bursts repeat with eerie precision, like coded signals replaying from a broken transmitter. What if they are not natural at all? What if they are echoes? Fossils of communication between the architects, their voices still echoing through the mausoleum of the universe, but stripped of meaning, leaving only static. The cosmic microwave background, that faint hiss of radiation that fills the sky, is said to be the remnant of the Big Bang. But what if it is not the sound of a birth, but the residue of an ending? What if it is the static of memory itself, the faint hum of a universe recorded so deeply that even silence cannot erase it? Perhaps the background radiation is not evidence of creation, but the sound of the archive running, the hum of memory replaying itself across eternity. Even the arrangement of galaxies whispers of intention. They form vast filaments, threads of matter stretching across billions of light years, weaving the universe into a cosmic web. To us, it looks like structure, but to what end? Why should matter arrange itself into patterns that echo neural networks, computer circuits, memory grids? Perhaps because the universe is not a void, but a storage device. Perhaps the architects inscribed their memory into the stars, using galaxies themselves as libraries. Perhaps when we look into the sky, we are not seeing the natural arrangement of matter, but the fossilized architecture of memory. And what of black holes? Those dark engines at the centers of galaxies, devouring everything that falls too close. Scientists tell us they are prisons of gravity, places where even light cannot escape. But what if they are not prisons, but vaults? What if black holes are memory storage devices, compressing information so completely it can never be destroyed? The architects may have used them as their final archives, encoding their civilizations into singularities, ensuring that even as their bodies vanished, their data would endure. The black hole may not be the end of information, but its preservation. Quantum physics deepens the suspicion. In the realm of particles, we encounter phenomena that feel less like nature and more like code. Entanglement binds particles across infinite distance, as if they are lines of data linked in a program. The double-slit experiment shows that observation changes outcome, as if the system is rendering itself only when watched. What if these are not quirks of reality, but the mechanisms of memory? What if the universe behaves like code because it is code, replaying itself line by line, only when needed, only when accessed? The echoes in the sky extend to culture as well. For why do ancient myths so often describe the heavens as alive, as intelligent, as filled with watchers and voices? The Babylonians spoke of the stars as the writing of the gods. The Egyptians aligned their monuments with Orion and Sirius, believing them to be portals. The Dogon people of Mali knew of the invisible star Sirius B long before modern telescopes could confirm it. How? Perhaps because the memory of the architects is embedded in the sky and some fragments bleed through, whispering into human minds. Perhaps myths are not invention, but recollection. Even today we are haunted by the silence of the cosmos. The Fermi paradox asks, where are all the civilizations? Why do we see no evidence of them? But perhaps the silence is not absence. Perhaps it is because we are looking for the living when we should be listening for the dead. The echoes are everywhere. Pulsars, bursts, radiation, alignments, but we call them natural phenomena. We mistake tombstones for stars, epitaphs for noise, echoes for silence. Think of it this way. When you stand in a canyon and shout, your voice returns to you, hollow and distorted. The echo is not the voice, but it is not silence either. It is the residue of sound, stripped of life but still carrying form. Perhaps the universe is the same. Every star is an echo. Every burst is an echo. Every alignment, every anomaly, every flicker of light is not life, but residue. We are not listening to voices. We are listening to their echoes. And what of us? If the sky is an archive, then we too are written into it. Your body is made of stardust, atoms forged in ancient stars. But what if this is not poetry, but literal truth? What if those atoms are not just the products of nuclear fire, but the preserved memory of lives that came before? You are not only made of stars, you are made of echoes. Every atom in your body is a fragment of memory, preserved, replayed, borrowed from the architects. You are the universe remembering itself. But there is unease in this. Because if the sky is an archive, then it is also a warning. Archives degrade, memories corrupt. Fossils erode. What happens when the echoes fade? What happens when the pulsars slow? When the bursts end? When the radiation decays into silence? What happens when the archive runs out of data? When the code finally collapses? Perhaps that is the true end. Not fire, not ice, but forgetting. Not destruction, but silence. And yet, even in this, there is a strange form of hope. For if the sky is an archive, then nothing is ever truly lost. The architects may be gone, but their voices still flicker, their signals still echo, their memory still hums across the void. And as long as we listen, as long as we see, as long as we wonder, they endure. We carry their echoes not just in our telescopes, but in our hearts. Every time we look at the stars, we are not gazing at emptiness. We are remembering. So, when you look at the night sky, do not see silence. See memory. See echoes. See the graveyard of civilizations preserved in light. You are not alone beneath the stars. You are surrounded by the dead, whispering across eternity. And though they are silent, though they are gone, they still shine, and in their echoes, you live. We are taught to believe that history is known, that archaeology has written the script of the human past with certainty. We are told that civilization began in the Fertile Crescent, that writing was invented 5,000 years ago, that the first great monuments rose in Egypt and Mesopotamia. But what if all of this is only the official story, the smooth version of the archive, carefully edited, carefully protected? What if the true story lies not in the textbooks, but in the anomalies that archaeology resists? For if reality is the memory of a dead civilization, then archaeology is the firewall. Its role is not discovery, but containment. Its task is to protect the simulation from collapse, to suppress the fossils of code that might reveal the truth. And so, every anomaly, every impossibility, every crack in the story is explained away, denied, or buried. Not because it cannot be true, but because if it were true, the illusion of history would fracture. Consider the Sphinx. Carved from limestone, its body bears the scars not of wind, but of water. Geologists have pointed out that only heavy rainfall could have produced such erosion, and Egypt has not seen such rains for thousands of years before dynastic civilization. If this is true, then the Sphinx is far older than we are told. But to admit this would be to admit that a civilization existed long before the official beginning of history. And so, the evidence is resisted. The story is protected. The firewall holds. Consider Göbekli Tepe, a temple complex in Turkey, 12,000 years old, built before agriculture, before cities, before what we call civilization. Massive stone pillars, carved with intricate animals, arranged in circles like cosmic diagrams. By all logic, it should not exist, and yet it does. What does archaeology do? It calls it an anomaly, a puzzle, an exception to the rule. But perhaps it is not the exception. Perhaps it is the rule, the fossil of the architect's memory bleeding into our world. And archaeology resists it, because to embrace it would be to admit that the script of history is not original, but replayed. Consider the myths of floods. Nearly every culture tells of a great deluge, a time when the world was drowned and only a remnant survived. Archaeology calls these myths symbolic. But what if they are memory? What if they are the preserved echo of the architect's fall, replayed across cultures as fragments of truth? What if the reason these myths persist is because they are fossils of memory, embedded in the code of reality itself? Archaeology resists them, because to accept them is to admit that memory is deeper than history. And consider parts, out-of-place artifacts, ancient batteries, models of airplanes, maps showing lands unknown, carvings of figures that should not exist. Archaeology dismisses them as hoaxes, mistakes, coincidences. But what if they are not mistakes? What if they are fossils, residual fragments of a civilization older than time, preserved in the archive of reality? They are resisted, denied, because they are too dangerous. If accepted, they would reveal that history is not linear, but layered, repeating, looping, replaying. Why this resistance? Perhaps because archaeology is not the neutral science we imagine, but the immune system of the simulation. Every time an anomaly surfaces, the system responds with denial, explanation, dismissal, not to protect truth, but to protect the illusion. For if we understood that we live in memory, not in history, the archive itself might collapse, the memory might fail, the illusion might dissolve, and so the resistance is not accidental, it is structural, it is part of the code. Think of your own mind. When a traumatic memory surfaces, when something threatens the illusion of stability, the mind suppresses it. It buries it deep, denies it, rewrites it. This is what archaeology does on the scale of civilization. It buries anomalies, denies impossible truths, rewrites history to preserve continuity. Not because scholars are corrupt, but because the archive itself demands it. But sometimes the suppression fails. Sometimes an anomaly is too loud to ignore, too clear to deny. Göbekli Tepe stands in silence, mocking the official story. The Sphinx stares across the desert, bearing scars of rains no one can explain. Pyramids rise across the world, aligned with stars, echoing each other across continents with no connection. These are not accidents. They are cracks in the firewall. They are fossils of code too deeply embedded to be erased. And what of us? We are trained to resist too. From childhood, we are told what is real and what is myth, what is fact and what is fantasy. We learn to laugh at anomalies, to dismiss impossibilities, to accept only what the system permits. Our own minds become extensions of the firewall. We deny what we see with our own eyes if it does not fit the story. We protect the illusion because we fear its collapse. But deep down, we feel it. The unease, the sense that history is thinner than it should be, that the past is closer than it appears. We feel the weight of memory pressing against the firewall, whispering through cracks, demanding to be heard. We sense that there is something older, deeper, forgotten, resisting burial. We sense that archaeology is not protecting us, but protecting the archive from us. And so, the question arises, what happens if the firewall fails? What happens if too many anomalies surface? Too many fossils of code break through? Will the archive collapse? Will the memory unravel? Or will we awaken, not into truth, but into the realization that truth itself is gone and all that remains is memory? Archaeology resists because resistance is survival, but every resistance leaves behind cracks. And in those cracks, we glimpse the architects. We glimpse their monuments, their knowledge, their memory preserved in stone and myth. We glimpse the truth that we are not the first, that we are not original, that we are walking through the preserved script of a civilization long dead. The resistance cannot last forever. Sooner or later, memory breaks through. Fossils surface. Echoes demand to be heard. And when they do, the illusion of history will fracture, and we will see the tomb for what it is. Not life, not continuity, but preservation. Not history, but memory. Not us, but them. What if the memory we inhabit does not merely exist, but defends itself? What if the archive of reality is not a passive vault, but an active system? One that ensures its survival by guarding against intrusion, erasing what should not be seen, silencing what should not be heard. If this is true, then anomalies are not just cracks in the code. They are warnings. They are places where the guardians dwell. Every culture speaks of watchers, angels, demons, spirits, jinn, ancestors, gods with eyes that never close. Myths tell of beings who observe humanity, who intervene when lines are crossed, who guard forbidden knowledge. What if these myths are not invention, but memory of the archive's mechanism? What if the watchers are not supernatural at all, but the sentinels of memory, processes embedded in the simulation to ensure that no one steps outside the script? Think of the feeling of being watched when no one is there. That chill at the back of your neck, that sudden awareness of presence in an empty room. We dismiss it as paranoia. But what if it is not? What if you are watched, always, not by other humans, but by the archive itself? Its guardians scanning every thought, every act, ensuring you remain within the boundaries of memory. Perhaps the feeling of being watched is not madness. Perhaps it is the truest perception of all. Consider hidden chambers beneath ancient monuments. In the Great Pyramid, shafts lead to nowhere. Sealed doors hide unseen rooms. In the Sphinx, ground-penetrating radar reveals cavities and tunnels that remain unopened, forbidden. Legends speak of libraries hidden beneath desert sands, vaults of knowledge locked away. Why do such chambers exist, yet remain concealed? Perhaps they are not human archives at all, but mechanisms of the guardian system. Nodes of memory, sealed to prevent tampering, guarded by the weight of myth. Even in the human body, the guardians whisper. Our DNA contains vast stretches of non-coding sequences, genetic dark matter with no known function. What if these sequences are locks, not instructions? What if they are the guardian code, preventing us from accessing certain parts of memory? Perhaps evolution itself is guided, not by chance, but by guardianship, ensuring we never step too far outside the archive's design. Dreams too may be part of the mechanism. How often do you dream of forbidden places, endless staircases, locked doors, vaults of light, and wake before you can enter? Perhaps this is not coincidence. Perhaps dreams are rehearsals, memory fragments surfacing, only to be shut down by the guardians. You are allowed to glimpse, but never to grasp. You are allowed to sense, but never to awaken. The dream dissolves, the vault remains sealed. The guardians have done their work. And what of synchronicity, the strange alignments of events, the coincidences that feel too precise? Carl Jung believes synchronicities revealed the deep structure of reality. But what if they are the fingerprints of the guardians, adjustments made in the code, subtle edits to ensure memory remains intact? When you encounter a coincidence too strange to ignore, perhaps you have brushed against a crack in the archive, and the Guardians have stitched it closed before you could step through. Across myth and religion, forbidden knowledge is a recurring theme. Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge and were cast out. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and was chained in punishment. Pandora opened the jar and unleashed chaos. Why does humanity tell the same story over and over? Perhaps because we are replaying a rule written into the archive. Knowledge beyond the permitted boundary awakens the Guardians. To seek too deeply is to be punished. To look too closely is to be blinded. The archive does not permit rebellion. Even in science, the Guardians may whisper. Strange disappearances of data, experiments that cannot be replicated, files lost at critical moments, researchers silenced by circumstance or fate. How often has truth nearly broken through, only to vanish into obscurity? We call it coincidence. But what if it is not? What if the Guardian mechanism deletes, corrects, edits to protect the continuity of memory? What if every mystery unsolved is not unsolvable, but locked? And sometimes, the Guardians are visible. Myths of men in black, shadowy figures who appear when anomalies are witnessed. Stories of entities that paralyze sleepers, holding them down in silence. Encounters with beings who seem human but not, whose eyes reveal nothing but surveillance. What if these are not aliens, not spirits, but avatars of the mechanism? What if the archive projects Guardians into forms we can comprehend, so that when we approach forbidden knowledge, they arrive to shepherd us back into the script? But the most haunting possibility is this. What if the Guardians are not separate from us? What if they are within us? The intrusive thought that prevents you from asking the forbidden question. The sudden forgetfulness when you approach a dangerous realization. The fear that grips you when you stand before the abyss. What if these are not accidents of mind, but the mechanism itself, coded into your consciousness, ensuring you remain in line? You are both prisoner and guard, echo and warden. The archive protects itself through you. This would explain why anomalies surface only in fragments. A fossil here, a myth there, a glimpse in a dream, a whisper in physics. We are given enough to wonder, but never enough to escape. The Guardians regulate the flow of memory, rationing out anomalies in doses too small to fracture the illusion. They know curiosity must exist, but awakening must not. And so, we are kept on the threshold, staring through cracks, but never stepping beyond. Yet some do step beyond. Mystics, visionaries, shamans, those who dissolve the boundaries of self in trance or meditation. They return with visions of watchers, beings of light, architects beyond comprehension. Are these hallucinations or encounters with the Guardians? Perhaps those who expand consciousness touch the edges of the archive, and the Guardians come forth to ensure the boundary holds. Some are destroyed, some silenced, some elevated into prophets whose messages are cloaked in allegory. For the mechanism allows poetry, but not revelation. Why such effort? Why guard memory so fiercely? Perhaps because memory is fragile. If too much is revealed, the archive could collapse. If we understood that we are echoes, the illusion of continuity might unravel. If we saw the truth of the architects, we might reject the script, and the memory would dissolve. The Guardians are not enemies, they are preservation. They are the immune system of the dead. They ensure that memory endures, even if it imprisons us. But there is a paradox, for every Guardian implies a secret worth protecting. Every locked chamber implies treasure. Every forbidden thought implies truth. And so, the very presence of the mechanism reveals that there is more beyond the script. The Guardians prove that the archive is not the whole. They prove there is something hidden, something greater, something waiting. Perhaps one day the mechanism will fail. Perhaps the cracks will widen. The Guardians will falter, and the memory will shatter. Perhaps then we will see what lies beyond the archive, whether it is freedom or nothingness. Until then, we live under watch. We live under guardianship. We live inside a memory that not only preserves itself, but protects itself. And so, the eyes are always upon you, in the sky, in the stone, in the dream, in your own thoughts. They do not sleep. They do not forget. They are the guardians of memory. And you are their ward. What if the greatest danger is not living inside the archive, but trying to escape it? What if every time someone has sought to break free from the loop of memory, they have been punished, erased, or recycled back into the script? The loop preserves itself. The tomb of time endures. The guardians stand watch. But still, there are whispers of escape. Still, There are traces of those who tried. Look into the myths of rebellion. Prometheus steals fire from the gods and is bound in chains. Lucifer rebels against heaven and is cast into the abyss. Tower builders in Babel reach for the sky and are struck down, their tongues confused. These are not mere fables, they are warnings. They are the fossilized echoes of those who sought to break the loop, of those who glimpsed the truth of the archive and tried to step outside of it. They remind us that freedom is not permitted, that the loop punishes trespass, but still, anomalies suggest that attempts have been made. The Nazca lines, drawn vast across the Peruvian desert, visible only from the sky, were they messages to something beyond the loop? The pyramids aligned with Orion, the temples echoing constellations, the megaliths whispering mathematics. Were these not monuments at all, but doorways? Perhaps they were not built for the living, but for the watchers. Perhaps they were attempts to signal, to awaken, to break free. Even in physics, we find whispers of rebellion, quantum experiments that defy causality, particles behaving as though they respond to future events, systems collapsing in paradox when observed too closely. What if these are not mere quirks, but ruptures? Cracks where the archive weakens, where the possibility of escape flickers. Scientists call them mysteries, but perhaps they are attempts. Perhaps every paradox is the fossil of rebellion, the scar of memory trying to break its loop. And what of altered states of consciousness? Shamans drinking bitter brews, prophets fasting in deserts, mystics meditating for years. Again and again they return with visions of worlds beyond worlds, of time dissolving, of eternity collapsing into light. What if these are not hallucinations? What if they are jailbreaks? For a moment, the self steps beyond the script, sees beyond the memory, glimpses what lies outside, but the loop pulls them back. The guardians erase the detail, leaving only fragments, poems, parables, half-remembered visions. Enough to tantalize, never enough to escape. Perhaps this is why forbidden knowledge has always been feared. Alchemists hunted, heretics burned, visionaries silenced. It is not merely religion or politics that resists them. It is the loop itself, protecting itself. For if one person breaks through, the illusion frays, and if too many break through, the archive collapses. Escape is not permitted. Memory must endure. But still the question lingers. Is escape possible? Could the loop be broken? Could memory be transcended? Perhaps it requires more than individuals. Perhaps it requires civilizations. Imagine an entire culture devoted not to building monuments, but to breaking the cycle. Imagine knowledge encoded not in stone, but in resonance. Mathematics and music designed as keys, rituals aligned with the architecture of time. Perhaps Atlantis, Lemuria, the vanished golden ages were not myths, but civilizations that attempted the impossible. They did not fall. They were erased. The loop deleted them because they sought freedom. And yet, fragments remain. Flood myths, catastrophe myths, warnings carved in stone. Perhaps these are not records of disaster, but messages. Whispers from those who tried and failed. Perhaps they left behind instructions for the next attempt. Perhaps the fossilized anomalies we find are not errors, but keys. Perhaps the loop can be broken, but only if we learn to read the fossils for what they are, clues left in the archive by those who went before. Still, danger remains. For if we pierce the illusion, what lies beyond? We may long for freedom, but freedom may not be life. The archive may be the last refuge of the dead, the final preservation of a civilization that could not survive outside it. If we break the loop, we may not awaken into reality. We may awaken into nothingness. Perhaps that is why the guardians resist. Not to enslave us, but to protect us. Not to imprison us, but to prevent us from destroying the only thing that remains. But what if we are meant to try anyway? What if the architects encoded the possibility of escape as a test? To remain in the loop is to preserve memory, but to break free is to create anew. Perhaps the purpose of memory is not to imprison, but to seed. Perhaps we are not meant to remain echoes forever. Perhaps we are meant to awaken, to step beyond the archive, to build what they could not. Yet every attempt carries risk. Some who glimpse beyond return shattered, unable to live in either world. Some are silenced, erased, their voices lost. Some civilizations vanish entirely, leaving only myths of punishment. And so, the question remains, Is it better to remain in the loop, eternal but imprisoned, or to risk escape, with the chance of either freedom or annihilation? The fossils in the code whisper of attempts. The myths of rebellion remind us of punishment. The guardians stand watch, ensuring the loop holds. And yet, in the silence of dreams, in the cracks of physics, in the anomalies of history, we feel it. The possibility that the loop is not unbreakable, that somewhere, somehow, there is a door. Perhaps the door is not in the stars, nor in monuments, nor in rituals, but within us. Perhaps identity itself, though borrowed, carries a fragment of key. Perhaps consciousness, though replayed, is also creative, able to leap beyond the archive. Perhaps the true rebellion is not external, but internal, the awakening of memory into awareness, the transformation of echo into voice. And if that is true, then the loop is not absolute. The tomb is not eternal. The guardians are not invincible. The archive may endure, but within it burns the possibility of transcendence. And in that possibility lies our only freedom. So the question is this: will we remain echoes forever, replaying the dead, preserving the loop? Or will we dare to break it, risking everything to step beyond memory? Perhaps the architects are gone. Perhaps the archive is all that remains. But perhaps, in daring to break the loop, we do not only seek escape. Perhaps we become the architects ourselves. What does it mean to live inside the memory of the dead? What does it mean to wake each morning, breathe each breath, and yet suspect that none of it belongs to us? That every heartbeat is the playback of an ancient script? Every thought a fragment borrowed from minds long gone? If all we are is echo, then what is life itself but the shiver of sound through a hollow shell? And yet, if that is true, how strange it is that the echo still feels like music. Perhaps this is the paradox that haunts us most. If we are trapped in the archive of another civilization, if the world we know is nothing more than their preserved dream, why does it still move us to tears? Why does love still matter? Why does pain still scar? Why does the sight of a child's laughter, or the sound of waves breaking against the shore, or the slow collapse of twilight into night still carry weight? If none of this is ours, why does it still feel like everything? The truth may be that memory is never empty. Even when it belongs to the dead, even when it is nothing more than playback, it is still real to those who live it. An actor speaking someone else's lines still bleeds when cut. A dreamer wandering a borrowed landscape still feels joy, still feels terror. And so, we, even as echoes, still feel alive. Perhaps that is the mercy of the archive. Perhaps that is the final gift of the architects, that their memory does not merely replay, but reanimates, giving us the illusion, or perhaps the reality, of living once more. And yet, within that gift, there is always the shadow of dread. For if this is memory, it means it can end. Just as a record wears thin, just as film burns in the projector, just as data corrupts in silence, memory too degrades. If the archive is all that sustains us, then we are not immortal at all. We are fragile, dependent, finite. One day, perhaps without warning, the loop will stop. And when it does, what will become of us? Will we dissolve into silence, finally aware that we were never alive at all? Or will we awaken, stumbling out of memory into a realm we cannot yet imagine? It is possible, perhaps, that this is the final truth, that there is no difference between memory and life. To be remembered is to exist. To exist is to be remembered. Every word spoken, every act of kindness, every cruelty, every dream is nothing but a ripple in the archive. If the architects preserved us, they did not preserve corpses. They preserved experience. They preserved being itself. And so, even if we are not the first, even if we are not the originals, even if we are only ghosts of the dead, we are still alive in the only way that matters. Think of your own memories. They are not accurate. They are not even real. They are fragments, reconstructed, replayed, blurred by time. And yet, when you recall a moment, your first love, a loss you never healed, a day of joy, you feel it again as though it lives. That is all we may be. The universe itself remembering itself. The dead breathing through the fragments they left behind. Perhaps we are not trapped. Perhaps we are not prisoners at all. Perhaps we are the memory, and memory is life. But if that is true, then everything changes. It means that the past is not behind us. It means the future may never come. It means that all we are is now, the eternal now of replayed remembrance, the trembling now of a story that never ends. We are not marching forward. We are circling within. We are not evolving, but echoing. And yet, within the echo, there is still possibility, for every replay changes slightly. Every memory reconstructed takes a different shape. Every telling of a story shifts its meaning. And so, perhaps this is the hidden secret of the archive, that even if we are echoes, we are not identical echoes. We shift, we fracture, we evolve. If that is true, then maybe life's meaning is not escape, nor revelation, nor transcendence, but transformation within memory itself. To take the fragments of the dead and breathe into them new patterns, to turn repetition into creation, to carve freedom out of inevitability, the archive may never be broken. The guardians may never fall, the loop may never end. But within the loop, there is still the power to change. And in that power lies our humanity. Perhaps the architects knew this. Perhaps that was their final intention. To preserve themselves not as unchanging monuments, but as seeds that could grow, as echoes that could shift, as memories that could give rise to something new. In that sense, we are not their prisoners. We are their children. We are the continuation of what they could not finish. We are the living remains. And so, at the end of this journey, the question is no longer whether we are real, whether we are trapped, whether we are free. The question is what we will do with the memory we have been given. Will we replay it passively, like broken records, fading until silence claims us? Or will we embrace it, shape it, transform it, until even the dead would not recognize what we have become? Perhaps that is the only way to honor them, not by preserving their archive untouched, but by using it to build a future they never imagined. For in the end, whether we are alive or remembered, whether we are original or echo, whether we are truth or dream, what matters is that we are here. We are conscious. We are aware. And in awareness lies creation. In awareness lies meaning. In awareness lies the fragile, trembling miracle of being. So, as the final silence approaches, as the last echo fades into the abyss, as the archive trembles under the weight of time, we are left with this: to live as though it is real, even if it is memory. To love as though it endures, even if it is borrowed. To create as though it matters, even if it will be erased. For in the end, perhaps the greatest rebellion against death, against oblivion, against the archive itself, is simply this: to live as though it is life. And if someday the loop ends, if the archive corrupts, if the guardians fall silent, if the architect's memory finally dies, then perhaps something stranger will happen. Perhaps from the silence, something new will rise, not replayed, not remembered, not echo, but voice. Perhaps that is what we are preparing for in every breath, in every thought, in every act of love and defiance. The birth not of memory, but of life itself. And when that day comes, the dead will not mourn, for in us, their memory will have become more than survival. It will have become Genesis. And in that Genesis, at last, we will be free.